The city skyline was a grid of cold, indifferent light from Eleanor Vance's 40th floor penthouse. Each window represented a life she couldn't fathom, a warmth she couldn't feel. Her world was one of polished marble, silent glass, and the hum of an air filtration system that scrubbed the air of any hint of the chaotic, messy world below. She ran a hand over the cool granite of her kitchen island, her reflection a pale, severe ghost in its surface. Success was a fortress, and she had built hers with walls so high they blocked out the sun. Tonight, the silence was heavier. A deal had closed, a hostile takeover of a smaller tech firm, executed with surgical precision. Her board was ecstatic. Her portfolio was ascendant, but the victory tasted like ash. She reached for her keys, needing noise, needing motion, needing anything other than the sterile echo of her own breathing. The rain started a block from her garage, a sudden violent downpour that turned the streets into slick, black mirrors. She drove too fast, chasing an escape she couldn't name. A flash of red light, the screech of tires not her own, and then a brutal, concussive impact that sent her world spinning into a kaleidoscope of shattered glass and blinding pain before it all faded to black. She surfaced to the cacophony of an emergency room. Beeps, shouts, the smell of antiseptic. A nurse was trying to get an IV into her arm, her face a mask of harried concern. "Ma'am, try to stay still. Your pressure is dropping." A different crisis erupted nearby. A monitor shrieked a flatline alarm. A crash cart rattled past. In the bed adjacent to hers, separated only by a thin curtain, a man with a gentle, deep voice was murmuring to a small child. "It's okay, sweet pea. Just a few stitches for your knee. You were so brave." Suddenly, the lights above Eleanor flickered and died. A collective groan went through the ER as the backup generator failed to kick in. Her monitor went silent. In the sudden, terrifying darkness, she felt a wave of dizziness, a cold certainty that she was slipping away. "She's crashing!" a nurse yelled. "We have no power! I can't see the vein!" Then, a calm voice cut through the panic. The man from the next bed. "I need a flashlight. Someone's phone. Now." A beam of light cut through the gloom, illuminating her arm. His large, steady hands were there, deftly finding her pulse. "I was a combat medic. I can find the vein by feel. Give me the needle." There was a moment of hesitation, then the nurse complied. Eleanor felt a sharp, clean prick, and then the blessed rush of fluid into her arm. The man's hand rested on her forehead, a grounding, solid weight in the chaos. "Breathe," he commanded softly. "Just breathe." The generator roared to life, and the world flooded with light just as she lost consciousness again. The image of his focused, kind face, the last thing she saw. Days later, the hospital room felt like an extension of her penthouse, private, sterile, and lonely. The doctors called her recovery miraculous. They spoke of a man, a civilian, whose quick thinking had saved her, Marcus Thorne. He had been there with his daughter Maya, who had fallen at the park. Eleanor felt a strange, unsettling debt. Gratitude was an emotion she rarely engaged with. It was a vulnerability, a concession of need. Yet it persisted. She had her assistant find his address, a modest apartment in a neighborhood she typically only saw from 30,000 feet. She stood outside his door, holding a ridiculously expensive gift basket, the cellophane crinkling in her gloved hands. When he opened the door, he was larger than she remembered, with shoulders that spoke of physical work and eyes that held a quiet weariness. He was wiping sawdust from his hands onto his jeans. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice the same calm baritone from the ER. "I'm Eleanor Vance," she said, the name usually a key that opened any door. Here, it just hung in the air. "You... in the hospital." Recognition dawned. "Oh, right. Please, come in." His apartment was the antithesis of her home. It was small but filled with the scent of lemon polish and something baking. Books overflowed from shelves, handmade wooden toys were scattered on a colorful rug, and a little girl with enormous, soulful eyes peered at her from behind his legs. This was Maya. "I wanted to thank you," Eleanor said, thrusting the basket forward. "My assistant put this together." Marcus looked at the basket laden with champagne and caviar and gave a small, polite smile. "That's very kind, but it wasn't necessary." He didn't take it. The rejection, gentle as it was, stung. "You're looking much better." "I am, thanks to you." The words felt inadequate. "They said you were a medic." "A long time ago," he said, his hand resting on Maya's head. "Different life." The silence stretched. Maya hadn't moved, her gaze fixed on Eleanor. Eleanor, unused to the unfiltered scrutiny of a child, felt her composure fray. She knelt down, an awkward foreign movement in her tailored suit. "Hello, Maya. That's a beautiful drawing." She pointed to a crayon sketch of a vibrant garden taped to the wall. Maya shrank further behind her father's legs. "She doesn't talk much," Marcus said quietly. "Not since her mom passed." The simple, unadorned statement landed with the force of a physical blow. Eleanor stood up, the chasm between their worlds feeling vast and unbridgeable. His life was shaped by love and loss, hers by profit and loss. "I see," she murmured. "Well, thank you again, Mr. Thorne." "Marcus," he corrected gently. "And you're welcome, Miss Vance." As she turned to leave, he said, "Wait." He disappeared into a small room off the living area, a workshop from the smell of fresh cut wood, and returned with a small, intricately carved wooden bird. "For you, as a get-well gift." She took it. The wood was smooth and warm, the details perfect. It was an object of pure, unpretentious beauty. It was worth more than anything in the cellophane-wrapped basket. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I'm glad you're okay," he said, and the sincerity in his eyes was something she hadn't encountered in years. It was unnerving. It was nice. Eleanor found herself thinking about that small, warm apartment, about the quiet man and his silent daughter. The wooden bird sat on her sterile nightstand, a stark, organic intruder in her world of glass and steel. A week later, she drove back, this time without a gift basket, propelled by an impulse she didn't understand. She told herself it was about properly repaying the debt. She found him not at his apartment, but at a sprawling community garden a few blocks away. He was on his knees, turning soil, with Maya sitting on a nearby bench, drawing in a sketchbook. He looked up as her shadow fell over him, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Ms. Vance," he said, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of a gloved hand. "Eleanor, please." She felt overdressed in her silk blouse and trousers. "I was just in the neighborhood." A lie so transparent it was laughable. He smiled, a genuine crinkling smile that reached his eyes. "Right, well, welcome to the neighborhood." He gestured to the plot of land, bursting with tomatoes and zucchini. "This is our little slice of paradise." She stayed for over an hour, perched awkwardly on the bench next to Maya, who occasionally slid her a shy glance before returning to her drawing. Eleanor listened as Marcus spoke about the garden, about the satisfaction of growing something with your own hands. He spoke about his late wife, a teacher who had started this very plot. "She believed in roots," he said, his voice soft with memory. "Believed everyone needed a place to grow." He explained that after she died, he'd walked away from his previous career to be a full-time father. "Maya needed me, more than I needed anything else." He didn't elaborate on what that anything else was, but the weight of a significant sacrifice hung in the air. The story was simple, profound, and utterly foreign to Eleanor's experience, where sacrifice was always a calculated step toward a greater ambition. Here, it was a simple act of love. His vulnerability was a quiet offering, a sign of trust she felt she hadn't earned. That visit became the first of many. Eleanor started carving out time in her schedule, fabricating meetings to explain her absences. She'd show up at the garden or at his workshop, a small, cluttered space that felt more like a sanctuary than a place of business. She learned the feel of sawdust, the smell of wood stain. She watched him work, his large hands, moving with impossible grace, turning rough blocks of wood into things of beauty. He was a master craftsman, a true artist. Maya slowly began to accept her presence. It started with a drawing left on the bench for her, a wobbly portrait of a woman with stiff dark hair and a surprisingly accurate depiction of her expensive shoes. Then Maya began to sit closer, sometimes even leaning against Eleanor's arm to show her a picture in a book. The child's silent companionship was a balm to a part of Eleanor's soul she hadn't known was wounded. One afternoon, acting on another strange impulse, she brought a small lacquered box from home. It was her grandmother's, a music box with a delicate ballerina inside. It had been broken for years, the melody silenced. "I know you're busy," she began, feeling foolish, "but I was wondering if you could look at this." Marcus took it, his calloused fingers surprisingly gentle as he examined the intricate mechanics. The mainspring is shot, and a few of the comb teeth are bent. It's old, but it's well made. He looked up at her. "I can fix it." As he spoke, his gaze drifted to a small, framed photograph on a dusty shelf. It showed a much younger Marcus standing proudly with an older man in front of a storefront. The sign above them read, "Thorn and Son Woodcraft." Eleanor's blood ran cold. Thorn and Son. The name hit her like a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. She remembered the acquisition file from 5 years ago. A legacy furniture company in Ohio, family-owned for 3 generations. It was a small strategic purchase for Vance Industries, meant to absorb their proprietary finishing techniques and then liquidate the assets. It was a standard, impersonal transaction, a footnote in a quarterly report. She had signed the final papers herself. They had dismantled it, piece by piece. She had personally overseen the project that had destroyed his family's legacy, the very thing he'd walked away from to care for his daughter. He had no idea. He was offering to fix her broken heirloom, while she was the one who had shattered his. The irony was a blade twisting in her gut. The man who had saved her life was the same man whose life she had, in a very real sense, ruined. The revelation poisoned everything. Every smile from Marcus felt like an accusation. Every silent glance from Maya felt like a judgment. How could she tell him? How could she not? The weight of her secret was suffocating. Her turmoil was compounded by trouble at the office. Julian Croft, a rival on her board, and the man who had been her partner, in business and in life, before he betrayed her a decade ago, was making a power play. He was circling, sensing a weakness he couldn't yet name. He was the one who had originally championed the Thorn and Son acquisition, calling it an efficient consolidation of assets. He embodied the ruthless, bloodless calculus she was beginning to despise in herself. Julian cornered her after a tense board meeting. "You seem distracted, Eleanor," he said, his smile thin and predatory. "Working late, or have you found a new hobby?" "My focus is where it needs to be, Julian." "Is it?" He slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was a candid photo of her, Marcus, and Maya at the community garden, laughing. "An interesting friendship. With Marcus Thorn, I had my team do some digging. Imagine the headline, 'Vance Industries CEO, who personally signed the order to shutter his family's 100-year-old business, now enjoys quaint afternoons with her victim.' It's a PR nightmare. Or," he paused, letting the threat hang in the air, "it's leverage." The trap was sprung. Julian was proposing a new round of acquisitions, even more aggressive than before, targeting small, family-run businesses in a vulnerable sector. He wanted her public, unequivocal support. If she gave it, he would bury the story about Marcus. If she refused, he would destroy her reputation and, in the process, devastate Marcus with the truth in the cruelest way possible. He was forcing her to become the person she no longer wanted to be, using the man who was changing her as the weapon. Her past and present were colliding, and the price of her new, fragile happiness was to perpetuate the very cycle of destruction she was learning to regret. The choice paralyzed her. To side with Julian would be a betrayal of everything she was starting to feel for Marcus and Maya, a desecration of the quiet peace she'd found with them. To defy him would mean the truth would come out, and she would lose them anyway. Julian didn't wait for her decision. He leaked the information, not to the press, but directly to Marcus, anonymously. A simple manila envelope containing a copy of the final acquisition order, with Eleanor Vance's bold, clear signature at the bottom. She went to his workshop that evening, the repaired music box in her bag, ready to confess everything. She found him standing at his workbench, his back to her. The air was thick with tension. The envelope was open on the bench. "Marcus," she said, her voice trembling. He turned slowly. The warmth was gone from his eyes, replaced by a deep glacial hurt. "Was any of it real?" he asked, his voice rough. "Or was this just some kind of penance for you? A charity case to ease your conscience?" "No, it wasn't like that. I didn't know it was you until I saw the photo. I swear." "You didn't know?" He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You destroyed my father's legacy. He built that company with his bare hands. It survived the Depression, 2 wars. But it couldn't survive you and a signature on a piece of paper. He died a year later. They said it was his heart, but he died of shame. Every word was a nail in her coffin. I am so sorry, Marcus. I was a different person then. I didn't see the people behind the numbers. I'm still a person, Eleanor. Maya is a person. And you stood in our home, in our garden, and you said nothing. He picked up the music box from his bench, its melody now clear and bright, and held it out to her. I fix things. This is what I do, but I can't fix this. She took the box, her hands shaking. She had come to him with a broken thing, and in return had left him with a broken trust. The silence that followed was worse than any shouting. It was the sound of a door closing, a bridge burning. She walked out of the workshop, the tinkling melody of the music box mocking her as she retreated back to her cold, empty fortress in the sky, more isolated than ever before. The board meeting was scheduled for the next morning. Julian sat at the head of the table, triumphant. He had won. Eleanor was broken, her secret weapon disarmed. He expected her to be a ghost, to rubber stamp his proposal and fade away. Eleanor walked in, her face pale but her eyes clear and resolved. She took her seat. Julian began his presentation, detailing the plan to acquire and strip 6 small companies. He spoke of synergy, shareholder value, and market dominance. He was speaking the language she had once been fluent in, but now it sounded alien, monstrous. When he finished, all eyes turned to her. Well, Eleanor, Julian prompted, a smug smile playing on his lips. Your thoughts? She stood up, her hands resting flat on the polished mahogany table. My thoughts, she began, her voice steady and clear, resonating with a newfound authority, are that this company has lost its way. We've become predators, mistaking destruction for growth. We talk about assets and forget about people. We sign papers and shatter lives. She looked directly at Julian. Lives like that of Marcus Thorne, whose family business, Thorne & Son, Woodcraft, we gutted 5 years ago on Mr. Croft's enthusiastic recommendation. A murmur went through the room. Julian's face hardened. I will not be a party to this any longer, Eleanor continued. I will not endorse a strategy that creates widows and orphans in the name of a rising stock price. In fact, I can no longer lead a company that prizes profit over basic human decency. Therefore, effective immediately, I tender my resignation as CEO of Vance Industries. Gasps filled the room. Julian shot to his feet. This is absurd. Eleanor held up a hand. I'm not finished. I will be liquidating a significant portion of my personal stock portfolio. The proceeds will be used to establish the New Leaf Foundation, an organization dedicated to providing capital and support to small businesses and communities harmed by predatory acquisitions. Its first act will be to offer full, unconditional restitution to Marcus Thorne, providing the capital to rebuild his family's company as he sees fit. This board can choose to follow Mr. Croft down a UAZ's path of moral bankruptcy, or you can choose to find your soul again. The choice is yours. She placed her key card on the table, turned, and walked out without a backward glance, leaving chaos in her wake. She didn't go home. She drove to the workshop. It was late, but a light was on inside. She found Marcus sanding a piece of maple, the rhythmic scrape of the paper the only sound. He didn't look up when she entered. She stood there, the space between them filled with the wreckage of her past actions. I resigned, she said quietly. He stopped sanding. What? I resigned, and I'm setting up a foundation. It's going to restore what was taken from you, from your family. No strings attached. It's not enough, I know that. It can't ever be enough, but it's a start. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She didn't deserve it. She was just reporting the facts, an act of restitution. I just wanted you to know. She turned to leave, her heart a leaden weight in her chest. She had done the right thing, the only thing she could do, and now she would walk away and let him heal without her toxic presence. A tiny voice cut through the silence. Stay. Eleanor froze, turning back. Maya was standing in the doorway of the main house, her sketchbook clutched in her hands. She looked from her father to Eleanor, her big, dark eyes pleading. She had spoken. For her. Marcus stared at his daughter, his own eyes filling with tears. He looked at Eleanor, at the woman who had wrecked his past, but had just sacrificed her entire future to try and mend it. He saw not a corporate shark, but the person who had sat patiently on a garden bench, who had marveled at his work, who had made his silent daughter feel safe enough to find her voice. He crossed the workshop in 3 long strides and pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. The dam of his anger and hurt finally broke, replaced by a wave of complex, overwhelming emotion. Forgiveness. Hope. The broken pieces were still there, but for the first time, it felt like they could be put back together. 6 months later, the sign for Thorn and Daughter Community Woodcraft gleamed in the autumn sun. The workshop had expanded, now serving as a training center for young people in the neighborhood. Marcus, his face relaxed and happy, was showing a teenager how to use a lathe. Eleanor managed the books, her laptop sitting on a simple wooden desk Marcus had built for her. She had traded her corner office for a corner of the workshop, and she had never felt wealthier. Her foundation was thriving, undoing the damage her old company had done, one small business at a time. The Vance Industries board, shamed into action by her public departure, had ousted Julian and begun a massive internal reform. That evening, they sat in the garden behind their small house, a house they had bought together, watching Maya chase fireflies. The air was cool, scented with chrysanthemums and damp earth. On a small table between them sat the music box. Its delicate melody filled the quiet air, a tune of healing and repair. Eleanor looked at Marcus, at the strength and kindness in his face, and at Maya, whose laughter was now the constant, beautiful soundtrack of their lives. She finally understood that true wealth wasn't an entry in a ledger, but the profound, simple grace of a broken thing made whole.